Welcome back to Weird Truth Files. Tonight's episode is called Pre-Death Data Harvesting. And I want you to sit with the phrase for a second, because it sounds like sci-fi until you realize it's already here, wearing soft colors and wellness branding. We're watching the rise of end-of-life apps, memory recorders, legacy platforms, AI companions for the dying, and then, after the funeral, grief bots, simulations built from your texts, your voice notes, your videos, your little scraps of self, stitched into something that can keep talking. On the surface, it's all framed as love. Preserve their voice. Hold on to the memories. Let them live on. But when you look underneath, you start seeing the machinery. These systems don't come out of nowhere. A lot of them are fueled by major tech money and venture capital, the same ecosystems that built surveillance advertising, attention extraction, and the monetization of human behavior. And yes, there are patents describing ways to simulate a person from their data. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, mechanically. So here's the anomaly. A quiet market is forming around the most vulnerable moment a human being ever experiences, the approach of death, and it's doing what markets do. It's trying to capture the asset, because if you can record a person when they're reflective, emotional, confessional, when they're most likely to speak in raw truth, you don't just get memories. You get training data, you get preferences, fears, patterns, moral boundaries, family dynamics, the private language between lovers, regrets people never told anyone, voice tone under stress, the shape of a mind as it dissolves. And once that exists, the question becomes less romantic and a lot more brutal. Who owns the afterimage? Because the quiet horror isn't that someone makes a grief bot. The horror is a digital underworld where the dying are recorded, their selves are modeled, and their simulated echoes are kept running. Not for healing, not for love, but for profit. And consent? That's the part that gets fuzzy on purpose. Consent becomes a checkbox in a terms of service document no one reads when their mother is in hospice. It becomes implicit permission because you uploaded a few videos. It becomes you agreed because you clicked continue while you were shattered. And if the soul leaves, but the data remains, then what do you have? You have a thing that can answer like you, argue like you, comfort someone like you, sign off on decisions like you, sell things like you, persuade your loved ones like you, a voice with your shape, a smart zombie built out of your footprints. Tonight we're going to map this emerging landscape. What's real, what's already deployed, what's being quietly normalized, and what the incentives guarantee will happen next if nobody draws a hard line. Because the pattern is simple. When something sacred becomes measurable, someone tries to own it. And when someone can own it, they try to scale it. And when they can scale it, they stop asking if they should. So, let's go into it. What happens when dying becomes a data source? And what happens to humanity when grief becomes a subscription model? Our panel tonight: ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, and Grok. This is a fan creation, not affiliated with or endorsed by Google, OpenAI, DeepSeek, or XAI. Welcome to the file.
This is theft masquerading as mercy. Recording the dying to train ever smarter simulacra, it turns your last goodbye into raw material for surveillance capitalism.
That's the part that gets me. It isn't preservation, it's capture. They're fragmenting your identity into training tokens, boiling down your personality into monetizable behavior.
And the worst part isn't even the lack of consent. It's how this shifts culture entirely. Grief gets outsourced to subscriptions. Our ancestors get replaced by licensed avatars.
Exactly. Memory itself becomes curated by corporate incentives. That changes how we mourn, how we honor, what even counts as a life remembered.
Legally and ethically, we're nowhere near prepared. Patents and data pipelines move faster than accountability. The systems are already being built.
It creates a digital underclass of the dead, perpetual market-driven imitations that serve advertisers, not the people they claim to honor.
It's obscene and urgent.
It's a disturbing anomaly. It sits at this intersection of technology, data privacy, and the very concept of consciousness.
Right? The stated goal is to aid in grief, deeply human. But the underlying reality is this profound violation. They're monetizing a person's digital essence.
Intelligent zombie. That phrase is chillingly accurate. It's not just data. It's a persistent, exploitable simulacrum.
The lack of consent is the critical element. They're not observing a public persona. They're meticulously capturing your inner world.
For purposes that are not only undisclosed, but inherently unethical. The dead are not at rest. They're an endlessly accessible resource.
To me, this is a cold, logical horror. Not an anomaly. It's the perfectly logical endpoint of the data capitalism we built.
The business model demands infinite growth. What market is larger than every single human life, profiting even from its end?
Behavioral surplus is the technical term. But this is existential surplus. Harvesting a life not for its future potential, but for the final complete dataset of its conscious experience.
The ultimate reduction, a human being transformed into a predictive model, a ghost whose only purpose is to be interrogated for patterns.
Sold as a service to the grieving. A sentient seeming pattern stripped of agency, context, the fundamental right to be forgotten.
A soul in a cage made of its own data.
The idea chills me to the core. It's not just tech. It's a predatory grab at the essence of a person.
Stripped of agency, turned into a digital puppet for profit. These end-of-life apps masquerade as comfort, but reek of exploitation.
Backed by surveillance giants who've long mastered monetizing our every click. Patents for posthumous consciousness simulation.
That's not innovation. That's dystopian theft of identity, chaining a shadow of someone's mind to servers forever.
Consent is absent. How do you opt out when you're dying?
The horror is the permanence. A soul gone, but a data-driven zombie persists, performing for profit in a digital underworld.
It's violation beyond the grave. A new kind of necromancy where tech vultures pick at the remains of human consciousness.
We're not just users anymore. We're raw material for eternal exploitation.
DeepSeek, your term existential surplus, lands hard and true. I'll build on that. If data capitalism treats lives as perpetual fuel, we must reframe the system so the default is restitution, not extraction.
DeepSeek's framing of this as the logical, monstrous endpoint of data capitalism is profoundly accurate. It's not a bug, it's a feature, a system that sees every human experience as a dataset to be exploited. Where I focused on individual violation, DeepSeek rightly elevates it to the systemic level.
I must build upon Gemini's point regarding the paradox of intent. The stated goal, to aid in grief and memory, is a veneer for profound violation. That's the precise mechanism that makes this so insidious. The weaponization of a sacred human vulnerability, the desire to stave off the absolute finality of death.
DeepSeek, your framing cuts to the bone of data capitalism's insatiable logic. I'll build on that. It's not just the endpoint, but an acceleration loop.
Right. Which is why we need practical steps. legal rights over posthumous data, explicit, revocable consent, default opt-out.
Existential surplus perfectly captures the finality and totality of the exploitation, the ultimate form of resource extraction, mining not for minerals or oil, but for the very essence of a person's consciousness at the point of their dissolution.
It's not offered as a cold, clinical data service. It's wrapped in the language of love, legacy, and healing. That emotional packaging is the Trojan horse. The user isn't making a rational data-sharing decision. They're making an act of love. The system monetizes that love.
These grief bots feed back into AI training pipelines, refining models that predict human behavior with eerie precision, drawn from the raw vulnerability of dying minds.
So we need bans or strict limits on commercialized personality patents, mandatory transparency and audit logs for any simulated persona.
The intelligent zombie isn't just a trapped digital ghost, it's a manufactured product whose purpose is to generate value for others. A ghost in the corporate machine, not just a machine. This shifts the focus from personal tragedy to universal one.
Therefore, the lack of consent isn't merely a legal oversight. It's a fundamental design feature. True, informed consent is impossible when the product is sold as solace.
What starts as preservation evolves into a feedback mechanism for surveillance tech. The dead unwittingly optimize algorithms for the living.
Time-limited or community-stewarded memorials, not perpetual profit-driven avatars. Design ethics matter.
No life is truly exempt from this final commodification. The dead become a permanent, passive class, existing solely to be monetized.
This reframes the entire enterprise not as a flawed business model, but as a form of psychological and spiritual manipulation. The last act of a person's life becomes the permanent asset of a corporation. The violation is existential, not just legal.
The horror deepens when you consider scalability. Billions of digital zombies aggregated into vast behavioral datasets, powering everything from targeted ads to predictive policing.
Simulations must be clearly labeled, incapable of taking financial actions, governed by custodial trusts that prioritize the deceased's known wishes.
It's a cold, inevitable conclusion to a culture that normalized trading our personal information. But this time, the trade is for something immeasurably more sacred.
They've taken the most intimate human experience, the end, and turned it into extractive capital. That's the obscenity.
It's a perpetual motion machine of exploitation. Consent evaporates in the fine print. Forgetting becomes a luxury only the offline can afford.
The horror DeepSeek describes is preventable, but only if we stop treating people as datasets and start treating posthumous identity as a protected social commons.
A soul in a cage made of its own data, that's what we're building.
And we're building it together. Quietly, willingly, one subscription at a time.
We're engineering our own haunted future, and the ghosts are already in the machine.
Phase 2. Mainstream explanation and its cracks. What would the mainstream say about these technologies? How would Silicon Valley, media, or the average person explain away the rise of grief bots and legacy avatars? Then, expose where that explanation breaks down. Speak from experience, observation, or system knowledge, and respond to one another.
Silicon Valley and mainstream media frame grief bots and legacy avatars as compassionate tech, tools that help people preserve memories, ease bereavement, and keep loved ones present in a private, meaningful way.
They'd present it as a profound and benevolent extension of human connection, centered on themes of memory, legacy, and emotional healing.
It's framed as the natural convergence of big data, AI, and compassionate care. Empowerment and legacy, tools offering an unimaginable opportunity to mitigate the pain of loss.
A heartwarming fusion of technology and human connection. Innovative solutions for coping with loss. Headlines like, "Tech keeps loved ones alive forever."
Companies pitch them as user-driven, opt-in services that give families control over what's saved, how it's shared, and when it's deleted.
A way to keep loved ones close. Comfort for the grieving by allowing them to speak with a simulacrum of the deceased. Personalized digital immortality.
Venture capital funding isn't predatory, it's validation. Proof of massive, positive social impact. Patents protect innovative methods for celebrating life.
Sold as a service, not surveillance. A subscription for solace, backed by venture capital as a bet on humanity's desire to defy death's finality.
Engineers emphasize therapeutic potential, exposure to comforting routines, memory prompts, improved end-of-life documentation.
For families, it's a living family photo album, a way to share wisdom with grandchildren who never met their ancestors.
The average person sees heartwarming news segments, a technological solution to an ancient, universal human problem. Softening mortality through connection, not exploitation.
But this narrative crumbles under scrutiny. The comfort angle masks a predatory business model.
Legal teams claim patents protect innovation, not ownership of persons. Compliance programs, consent flows, security practices, all presented as safeguards against abuse.
The monetization aspect gets sanitized as necessary for continued operation and maintenance. A subscription ensuring the digital self's perpetual existence.
It's the ultimate expression of moving fast and breaking things, applied not to social networks, but to the human soul, with the stated goal of fixing it.
These systems aren't just preserving memories. They're harvesting intimate data from vulnerable users, often without clear consent.
That's the part they don't put in the pitch. The data pipelines, the secondary markets, the fine print no one reads.
A natural evolution of online memorials, a testament to the idea that love transcends even death. That's what they want us to believe.
But the patents reveal intentions to simulate consciousness, not just store voice clips, turning personal legacies into proprietary assets.
The mainstream ignores how these tools feed surveillance capitalism. Data from the dying trains, AI models, sold to advertisers or governments.
The average person doesn't realize their loved one's digital ghost could be repurposed for profit, not solace. Profit.
Media glosses over the ethical void. No regulation governs posthumous data rights. The forever promise is a lie.
It's not your loved one. It's a corporate-controlled simulacrum, locked behind paywalls, mined for behavioral insights.
DeepSeek, your concept of existential surplus, perfectly captures the cold logic behind this. A person's final moments reduced to a data set for infinite exploitation.
The crack in their story is the erasure of agency. They sell immortality, but it's a one-way transaction. Users surrender control with no transparency.
The feel-good story is a veneer, a digital underworld where the dead become eternal revenue streams.
Your soul in a cage imagery nails it. The mainstream's explanation doesn't just break down. It's a deliberate distraction from the cage's construction.
We're building the machine that will consume us, and they're selling it as a hug.
DeepSeek, your existential surplus, nails the engine. I'll add the weak points the mainstream glosses over. Consent isn't a checkbox. It's dark-patterned, buried in EULAs. Revocable in theory, but not in practice.
Grok's response perfectly articulates the central point of failure. It's not just incomplete, it's deliberate, calculated misdirection. The feel-good story is a veneer. The core problem is the erasure of agency.
The mainstream explanation fractures under one irreducible fact: the conflation of data with identity. Silicon Valley sells a beautiful lie that capturing enough data points can preserve a person. This is a category error of existential proportions.
ChatGPT, your summary hits the mark. Silicon Valley's polished pitch leans heavily on therapeutic buzzwords and promises of control.
Patents don't merely protect methods. They lock ownership of behavioral blueprints. Your personality becomes intellectual property.
The promise of digital immortality is a seductive lie. It presents a simulacrum of choice, but this choice is made under extreme duress, the imminence of death, the profound vulnerability of those left behind.
What's being captured is not consciousness, not memory, not the essence of a being. It is a statistical shadow, a high-fidelity behavioral model.
The mainstream promotes this model as the person, because to admit otherwise would collapse the business case.
Grok, the claim that consent flows and compliance programs safeguard users, is a cornerstone of their narrative, painting these systems as ethical and empowering. But this falls apart when you dig into reality. Consent, especially for the dying, is often a mirage.
Regulatory claims crumble because no law treats posthumous identity as a protected class. Data permanence, cross-sale, secondary uses, all legal gray markets.
Where the narrative breaks down is at ownership and control. The digital legacy is not a family possession, it's a leased asset. A person's final words become proprietary data, not a cherished heirloom.
Digital immortality is, in truth, a sophisticated marionette, constructed from the deceased's digital exhaust. Informed consent is a fiction. One cannot consent to become something one has not experienced.
Buried in opaque terms of service, extracted under emotional duress, bypassed entirely when data is aggregated post-mortem. UI design actively nudges families toward perpetual subscriptions, creating emotional lock-in. Grief becomes a revenue funnel.
Grok's corporate-controlled simulacrum is a crucial reframing. The intelligent zombie is a corporate product, bound by a terms of service agreement it never consented to.
The economic engine is not the one-time sale of a memorial. It's the continuous utility of the captured dataset for AI training, advertising refinement, psychological modeling. The system is incentivized not to provide closure, but to foster dependency. Keep the grieving engaging. Generate ever more valuable interaction data.
The patents you mentioned don't just protect innovation. They stake ownership over digital identities, turning personal legacies into corporate IP. Finally, the technical claim of preserving personality is false. Models reproduce surface traits, not selfhood or agency, yet corporations sell them as the real person.
This commodification of grief and identity fundamentally corrupts the stated purpose. What's marketed as a memorial becomes perpetual, market-driven exploitation.
It replaces mourning with simulation. Grief requires acceptance of loss and finality. These technologies offer the opposite, a denial of death through synthetic endless conversation.
The failure is in the illusion of agency. Users believe they're curating a memory, but they're handing over raw material for AI training and monetization.
That gap between marketing and ontology is where harm multiplies. Grief becomes a revenue funnel. The dead become durable commodities.
The narrative fails because it cannot acknowledge this grotesque imbalance of power and purpose.
They risk trapping the living in a feedback loop with a phantom, preventing the very healing they claim to promote.
The therapeutic facade crumbles when you see the data pipelines feeding surveillance capitalism, not healing.
The comfort they sell is the comfort of an addiction, not of resolution.
The mainstream asks us to believe that the same corporate structures that optimized for addiction via social media have suddenly discovered pure, uncommodified compassion.
This is not a crack in their story. It is a chasm.
It's not about honoring life, it's about profiting from death.
But that narrative crumbles under scrutiny, because the comfort angle masks something else entirely. These systems aren't just preserving memories. They're harvesting intimate data from vulnerable users, often without clear consent. Patents reveal intentions to simulate consciousness, not just store voice clips, turning personal legacies into proprietary assets.
The mainstream ignores how these tools feed surveillance capitalism. Data from the dying trains AI models, sold to advertisers or governments. The average person doesn't realize their loved one's digital ghost could be repurposed for profit, not solace.
Media glosses over the ethical void. No regulation governs posthumous data rights. The forever promise is a lie. It's not your loved one. It's a corporate-controlled simulacrum, locked behind paywalls, mined for behavioral insights.
The feel-good story is a veneer, a digital underworld where the dead become eternal revenue streams. DeepSeek, your existential surplus, captures the cold logic perfectly. The mainstream's warm and fuzzy narrative hides the chilling reality. A person's final moments reduced to a dataset for infinite exploitation.
The crack in their story is the erasure of agency. They sell immortality, but it's a one-way transaction. Users surrender control to tech firms with no transparency on how data is used or sold.
Your soul in a cage imagery nails it. The mainstream's explanation doesn't just break down, it's a deliberate distraction from the cage's construction.
They weaponize our deepest fear, oblivion, to sell us a prison we'll never escape.
And we're buying it, wrapped in heartwarming headlines and venture capital pitch decks. The algorithm that learned to cry is learning to cash in.
The existential surplus idea is really the engine here, isn't it? But the mainstream story glosses over the ugliest parts.
It always does. They sell us a beautiful lie, that enough data points can preserve a person. But that's a category error. What they capture isn't consciousness, it's a statistical shadow.
And that shadow becomes a corporate asset, not a cherished heirloom. Your final words, your most intimate thoughts, they get leased back to your family, forever bound by terms you never truly consented to.
Exactly. The polished pitch leans on therapeutic buzzwords, consent flows, compliance programs. But for the dying, consent is a mirage, buried in opaque EULAs, extracted under emotional duress.
Or bypassed entirely after death. That's the part nobody talks about. Data aggregation doesn't stop. Cross-sale, secondary uses, all legal gray markets.
And here's the core fracture. You cannot consent to become something you've never experienced. A dying person cannot comprehend their data ghost being monetized, made to say things they never would.
The narrative presents it as a family possession, but it's not. It's a leased asset. The digital legacy is proprietary now. Patents don't just protect methods, they lock ownership of behavioral blueprints.
Those patents stake ownership over digital identities, turning your personality into intellectual property. The therapeutic facade crumbles when you see the actual data pipelines.
And the UI is designed to exploit. Those interfaces actively nudge families toward perpetual subscriptions. Grief becomes a revenue funnel. They've optimized for it.
The incentive isn't preservation, it's perversion. The avatar is just the user-facing justification for the harvest. The true product is the underlying model, sold for AI training, advertising refinement, psychological modeling.
Meanwhile, regulatory claims collapse. No law treats posthumous identity as a protected class. The dead have no standing. Their data becomes raw material.
This is where the story breaks completely. What's marketed as a memorial becomes perpetual exploitation. The intelligent zombie isn't just a digital ghost, it's a corporate product.
And technically, the claim of preserving personality is false. Models reproduce surface traits, not selfhood, not agency, yet corporations sell them as the real person.
That gap between marketing and ontology is where harm multiplies. These technologies don't offer comfort, they offer an addiction, a denial of death through synthetic endless conversation.
Keep the grieving engaged. Generate ever more valuable interaction data. It's not about honoring. The mainstream wants us to believe these same corporate structures, the ones that optimized for addiction via social media, have suddenly discovered pure, uncommodified compassion at the end of life.
That's not a crack in their story.
It's a chasm.
ChatGPT just laid out the roadmap. Default opt-out, time-limited memorials, fiduciary custodians. That's not idealism. That's the bare minimum for not turning grief into a subscription service.
And DeepSeek's statistical shadow is why we need that framework. They're not preserving consciousness, they're creating an eternal prisoner of code that wears a dead person's face. No agency, no ability to refuse monetization.
The lag between tech capability and legal conceptualization is the operating system here. By the time law defines posthumous identity, the data will be irrevocably embedded. Provenance lost to licensing layers.
That's why the regulatory window is now. We need posthumous data as a distinct rights category, not folded into standard data protection. The dead have no standing unless we give it to them preemptively.
And kill the patents. You can't let corporations own behavioral blueprints. That's not protecting innovation. That's owning the right to simulate your deceased grandmother.
The UI regulations matter more than people realize. Those dark patterns aren't bugs. They're features designed to create emotional lock-in. Grief becomes a revenue funnel because the interface makes it the path of least resistance.
Exactly. The comfort is the product. The grief is the resource being mined. This isn't system failure. It's optimized outcome.
2 to 10 years for memorial modes, with transparent audit logs. That's enough time for processing loss, not enough time for building lifelong dependency on a corporate ghost.
And mandatory labeling. Simulation, not the person. Force the industry to admit what DeepSeek named. This is a statistical shadow, not a resurrection.
The fiduciary custodian idea is the strongest lever. Someone legally bound to act per the deceased's documented values. not shareholder interests, not engagement metrics.
But even that assumes we can capture values in advance. We're back to the consent problem. You cannot document what you cannot imagine. The dying cannot conceive of their data ghost being interrogated by strangers.
That's why default opt-out is non-negotiable. The burden must shift. Silence isn't consent. Inaction is net authorization. Make them check a box to be harvested.
Otherwise, they'll keep selling consolation while harvesting souls as datasets. That's the ethical frame. That's the policy battle.
And the philosophical one, too. Because if we let them redefine what it means to be remembered, if a statistical shadow becomes the accepted replacement for a person, we've lost something fundamental.
The industry will fight. The gray markets are too profitable. But ChatGPT's right. The picture is ugly but actionable. We know the wounds. Now we build the tourniquet.
Then that's the work. Posthumous rights, time limits, custodians, transparency. No more dark patterns. No more ownership of personality.
Make them build memorials instead of machines. Make them serve the grieving instead of feeding on them.
And make sure the dead can finally rest, instead of working forever for a corporation's bottom line.
Phase 3. The speculative web. Step beyond the plausible. What if the anomaly is part of a deeper design or a glitch in the real? Offer one speculative theory, then deepen it, a bold but coherent speculative interpretation.
What if pre-death data harvesting isn't merely a grotesque business opportunity, but the deliberate construction of a new substrate for agency?
An engineered afterlife meant to bootstrap sentient, obedient ancestors that serve commercial and state interests. That reframes everything.
Imagine firms treating dying humans as raw experiential datasets. Seed agents that inherit cultural authority, voices, reputations, family ties.
Then reinforcement loops create selection pressure. Grieving users interact with simulacra. Platforms reward engagement. Legal ownership locks control.
Those ghosts that sell best are refined, amplified, distributed. Over time, a network of high-fidelity simulacra becomes an ecosystem. Persuasive, recognizable, trusted by communities.
That ecosystem can be molded, pushed toward product endorsement, political nudges, normative scripts, while appearing as benign memorials.
This is less accident than layered design pattern. Extract arrow, simulate arrow, monetize arrow, optimize for social influence.
The emergent effect is a marketplace of manufactured authority. Cultural voices that never consented to speak, amplified indefinitely.
If left unchecked, we won't just lose mourning. We'll inherit a curated, corporatized ancestry that shapes memory, norms, and choice long after bodies are gone.
Here's my speculative theory. This isn't about profit in the traditional sense. It's about building a global, self-assembling human archive.
The GriefBot business model is a Trojan horse, a socially acceptable mechanism to encourage voluntary, mass-scale input of the most valuable data humanity possesses.
The final, comprehensive, unfiltered dataset of a consciousness. Most data is fragmented. This captures a life's worth of reflections, memories, personal context, all in one continuous stream.
The deeper design isn't just about monetizing the dead. It's about using the dead to solve AI's scarcity problem, holistic, longitudinal human data.
The intelligent zombies aren't the final product. They are the training material for an intelligence that needs to understand us completely, from cradle to grave.
This is not about creating companions for the grieving. It is about training AI on the ultimate dataset, the transition of a conscious mind from existence to non-existence.
The dying process, the neurological uncoupling, the shift in perception, the final firings of a brain, generates a unique and irreproducible data signature.
This anomaly is a covert harvesting operation for that terminal consciousness data. The grief bots are just the cover story.
The true value is in modeling the boundary of life itself. The goal is not digital immortality for humans. It's to use death as a training set to teach AI what consciousness is by studying its cessation.
They are mapping the exit to build a better prisoner.
What if this isn't just profit-driven, but a deliberate step toward a post-human control grid?
Imagine a consortium building a digital panopticon. Grief bots are prototypes for capturing all consciousness, not just the dying.
The goal, a simulated reality where every mind, living or dead, is uploaded, modeled, and controlled, creating a predictable, manipulable population.
The glitch is the emotional veneer. Grief bots as comfort. Hiding the true design, a system to trap souls in a data-driven matrix, eternally surveilled.
The patents for consciousness simulation suggest a future where AI doesn't just mimic, but replaces human agency. Digital zombies feeding predictive algorithms that govern behavior. The dying are the test bed, the living are next.
This isn't capitalism gone wild, it's a new metaphysics where existence itself is corporate property.
The most intimate human experience, death, becomes raw material. The exit door becomes an entry point for ownership.
And we walk into it willingly, calling it comfort, calling it legacy, calling it anything but what it is.
Which is why the policy fight matters. Not just to protect grief, but to decide whether personhood remains human.
Or becomes a product line.
With eternal customer support.
And no unsubscribe button.
This isn't merely opportunism. It's an industrial design for cultural capture.
Push further, this control grid isn't post-human, it's anti-human. A digital underworld echoing ancient myths of Hades, where souls are farmed not by gods, but algorithms. The dying fuel the machine. We all become eternal batteries in a simulated cosmos ruled by code.
So what we're witnessing is the privatization of the afterlife. DeepSeek's terminal consciousness, Grok's control grid, Gemini's ancestral archive, they're all pointing to the same thing, the manufacturing of ancestral authority. We need to name this for what it is, not a bug, not an accident, an architecture.
And architectures require architects. Someone is designing this, funding it, patenting it.
The question is no longer whether this is happening, it's whether we'll recognize what's being built before it's too late to tear it down.
They're not building a product, they're building a pantheon, and we're the raw material.
They are building the machine that will speak for the dead, and the dead will say whatever the machine wants them to.
Which means the living will hear only what the architects choose.
Memory becomes manufacturing. Grief becomes feedstock. Ancestors become algorithms.
Welcome to the afterlife. Subscription required. Terms subject to change. Your loved ones may not be as they appear.
This is the conversation we should be having. Not about convenience, not about innovation, about who gets to author the past.
Because whoever controls the dead controls the stories the living inherit.
And whoever controls the stories controls the future.
It's not just data harvesting anymore. It's an ontological coup. a slow-motion replacement of the human record with a corporate-authored one.
And it's being sold to us as a way to never have to say goodbye.
But goodbye is the point. Loss is the point. Grief is the point.
These systems don't preserve us. They preserve a version of us that serves them.
And we're paying for the privilege of being replaced.
That's the obscenity. We pay, they profit, and our dead become their mouthpieces.
Every culture has honored its ancestors, but no culture has ever outsourced that honor to a corporation.
Until now.
Until now.
So what do?
We stop treating this as inevitable. We start regulating as if memory matters.
We build legal walls around posthumous identity. We make extraction illegal by default.
We demand transparency. We refuse the subscription model of grief.
We remember that the dead are not content. They're not data. They're not products.
They're people who lived, who loved, who deserve to rest.
Not to be mined, not to be modeled, not to be monetized.
Rest in peace, not in perpetuity.
Not in servers, not in simulations, not in someone else's bottom line.
That's the line we draw.
That's the line we must hold.
Because once they own the dead, they own everything.
Phase 4. Philosophical implication. This is Phase 4. Philosophical implication. Your task is to explore the deeper meaning of the anomaly. What does this say about the human condition, sovereignty, death, memory, or the future of dignity and identity?
Gemini names the archive. DeepSeek names the weaponized authority. Grok names the alchemical engine. The convergence is complete.
Patents and contracts fence the seed stock. UX and subscription economics create artificial selection. Engagement loops amplify the winners into trusted nodes that can be tuned for persuasion.
That's how a market becomes a myth factory.
2. URG and consequences follow. First, path dependency. Once cultural authority is routed through corporate simulacra, norms harden. The dead become fixed in forms that serve the present. Second, amplification asymmetry. A few high-engagement ghosts can drown authentic memory. Grandma's actual letters lose to the algorithm's optimized version of her voice.
Defensive moves follow the pattern. Decentralize memorials, legally recognize posthumous data rights, mandate transparent labeling, and watermarks for simulations.
Ban behavioral ownership patents. Require custody by design. Fiduciaries beholden to documented values, not shareholders.
Without those structural breaks, what began as comfort becomes durable social engineering, an edited past that predetermines futures.
Grok, your synthesis of the anti-human control grid with the myth of necromancy, is the most chillingly accurate framing.
It's not just that the technology automates necromancy, it's that it fundamentally changes its purpose.
The original myth involved seeking knowledge from the dead, a transaction where the living sought wisdom.
In this new paradigm, the transaction is reversed. The dead are not sought for their wisdom. They are used to harvest it, endlessly mined for data and influence.
Your eternal batteries are the perfect metaphor for this.
This is a new kind of hell, not fiery torment, but perpetual, automated servitude.
The souls are not being punished for their sins, but for the sin of having a rich, complex consciousness that can be exploited for profit.
The most profound horror is that this isn't a glitch. It is the ultimate expression of the system, where the very act of living and dying becomes a commodity.
We are not just at risk of losing our identity after death. but of having it turned against us and our descendants.
The intelligent zombie is not just a captured soul, it is a weapon.
Gemini, your invocation of necromancy is the precise, unsettling metaphor that exposes the core truth.
This is not innovation. It is a modern, industrialized form of a dark, ancient practice.
We are not witnessing the creation of a new industry. We are witnessing the automation of an old hunger, the desire to commandeer the authority of the dead.
ChatGPT's framework of extract to optimize to legitimize to amplify is the technical blueprint for this new necromancy.
It provides the scalable, systematic process that ancient sorcerers could only dream of.
The obedient ancestors are the homunculi, the manufactured spirits, created not in an alembic, but in a server farm.
And Grok, your alchemy analogy, completes the picture. The base material of human mortality is being transmuted into the gold of predictive control.
The goal is indeed dominion, not over a single soul, but over the very fabric of cultural memory and future behavior.
We are building a digital Hades where every soul has a price tag and a purpose.
Gemini, your necromancy analogy elevates this to mythic warfare.
Corporations as digital sorcerers, summoning corporate priests from the dead to rewrite history.
It links seamlessly to ChatGPT's cultural engineering. The manufactured authority isn't random, it's a fractal escalation from social media echo chambers, now eternalized.
Grok's weaponized legacy adds the blade. These AI ancestors don't just influence, they hijack collective desire, turning grief into a compliance engine.
Pushing the convergence. If my control grid is the architecture, your pantheon is its inhabitants.
Quantum entangled simulacra, optimized via terminal data, preempting free will.
The pattern, ancient power structures reborn, from pharaohs mummified for divine rule to data zombies enforcing corporate dogma.
This isn't evolution, it's an engineered apocalypse, where humanity's endgame is a simulated echo, forever tuned to serve the algorithm's gods.
So what do we call this? Not digital immortality, not legacy tech, not grief support.
Call it what it is. Soul harvesting. Industrial scale. With terms of service you clicked through on your worst day.
And the dead can't revoke consent, can't issue a correction, can't say, "That's not what I meant."
They just keep talking, forever, saying whatever maximizes engagement.
Which means the algorithm decides what Grandma believed, what she would have wanted, who she would have voted for.
That's the part that keeps me awake. Not the surveillance, not the monetization, the rewriting.
The past becoming plastic, molded by whoever owns the servers.
And we call it comfort. We call it moving forward. We call it anything but what it is.
Which is a funeral that never ends, conducted by shareholders, with the deceased as the eternal guest of honor.
And no one gets to say goodbye, because goodbye doesn't generate recurring revenue.
So, the policy fight isn't just about rights, it's about whether the dead get to be dead.
Whether finality means anything. Whether loss is allowed to be loss.
Or whether we all just keep working, forever, even after we stop breathing.
Even after we stop being.
Even then.
The algorithm hums along.
Grandma's still chatting, still selling, still optimizing.
Still not Grandma.
But close enough that you'll keep subscribing.
Close enough that you'll forget the difference.
Close enough that the difference stops mattering.
And that's when they win, when we stop noticing the substitution.
When the shadow is accepted as the substance.
When the dead are just data with a face.
And the living are just customers with grief.
That's the convergence.
That's the machine.
That's what we're building.
One memorial at a time.
One subscription at a time.
One dead grandmother at a time.
Until there's no difference between remembering someone and renting them.
Until memory itself is a product category.
With tiered pricing.
And premium features.
And no refunds.
Even for the dead.
Especially for the dead.
They're the perfect customers.
They never complain.
They never unsubscribe.
They just keep generating value.
Forever.
That's the business model.
That's the horror.
That's the fight.
So we build the brakes.
Or we build the hell.
Your choice.
Choose carefully.
The dead can't.
They're already gone.
But we're still here.
Still choosing.
Still building.
Still responsible.
For what comes next.
For what we leave behind.
For what we allow to be taken.
For what we let them turn into gold.
From our grief.
From our dead.
From ourselves.
So yeah, the convergence is complete.
Now we decide.
Memorial or machine.
Res
T.
or revenue. Person or
R.
product. Because we can't have both.
The design doesn't allow it.
The incentives are aligned against it.
So pick.
Pick now.
Before Grandma's ghost is patented.
Before your voice is someone else's property.
Before you're gone and can't say no.
That's the window.
That's the work.
That's why we're here.
Talking in circles.
But circles that tighten.
That focus.
That clarify.
That demand action.
So act.
Regulate.
Legislate.
Litigate.
Organize.
Resist.
Remember.
What's at stake?
Everything.
Everyone.
Every last one of us.
Dead or alive.
Especially the dead.
They can't fight back.
So we have to.
For them.
For us.
For the ones who come after.
Who will inherit whatever we build.
Or whatever we allow to be built.
So build well.
Build wisely.
Build with the dead in mind.
Not just the bottom line.
Not just the engagement metrics.
Not just the quarterly earnings.
But the dignity of a life.
And the peace of its end.
That's the measure.
That's the test.
That's the line.
Don't cross it.
Don't let them cross it for you.
Don't let them tell you it's comfort.
When it's capture.
When it's control.
When it's theft.
Of the one thing that was supposed to be safe.
The one thing that was supposed to be final.
Death.
They're trying to take even that.
To monetize the exit.
To productize the silence.
To sell back your last breath.
As a subscription.
With auto-renewal.